With the Infinity Saga coming to an end in Avengers Endgame, I thought it was finally time I addressed the cultural phenomenon that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Obviously the franchise is far too expansive to possibly cover in one video, so I've decided to tackle each phase separately. Even then, this is going to be a multi-part series. Before we begin, be warned this video will include spoilers. By the mid-2000s, there had already been a number of films based on Marvel Comics properties. Some successful, others less so. However, these were all produced by different studios, and each existed within their own distinctive continuities, unlike the comics they were based on, nearly all of which coexist in the shared Marvel universe. This all changed in 2005, when Marvel formed its own independent studio, with the intention of producing films set within a shared cinematic universe. The inaugural entry in this new Marvel Cinematic Universe was the 2008 film Iron Man. The film was directed by Jon Favreau, the first of several indispensable Marvel directors. Favreau knew how important it was for this film to stand out. Right from the very first scene, he established a distinctively unique tone. Despite being an origin story, it doesn't feel standard. The dialogue, a lot of which was reportedly improvised, feels genuine and natural, and the characters' relationships feel real and established. There is famously a lot of quippy humour, especially from Tony Stark.
Day 11, test 37, configuration 2.0. For lack of a better option, dummy is still on fire safety. If you douse me again, and I'm not on fire, I'm donating you to City College.
But the film also knows when to be serious.
Thank you for saving me.
Don't waste it. Don't waste your life.
Favreau doesn't waste a moment throughout, resulting in a lot of details you only notice on repeat viewings. I've heard Iron Man described as a grounded or realistic superhero film, akin to say Batman Begins. While it certainly has a basis in reality, this is still undeniably a comic book movie. I mean, the film ends with two men in mechanized suits punching each other on top of an exploding building. What makes the film feel so grounded is Favreau's direction. He wisely invests viewers in the characters early on, before easing into the more fantastical elements, so by the time they become the main focus, viewers are willing to accept them as believable. Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark is the heart and soul of this film. On paper, a narcissistic billionaire shouldn't make for an endearing protagonist, but Downey's natural charm somehow makes it work, as he, for the most part, straddles the line between being merely obnoxious and downright unlikable. Favreau wanted Downey for the role, as he felt the actor's own life somewhat paralleled that of the character. He also believed Downey could make Stark a likable asshole.
Let's face it, this is not the worst thing you've caught me doing.
Stark's personal assistant, Pepper Potts, is one of the few characters who can truly hold her own against him, and Gwyneth Paltrow masterfully disarms Downey's abundant charisma.
Are you talking about the night that we danced and went up on the roof and then you went downstairs to get me a drink and you left me there by myself? Is that the night you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Pepper's loyalty to Tony is not unfounded. Though he is terrible at showing it, Stark clearly appreciates her.
I don't have anyone but you.
The same could be said of Rhodey. Though his relationship with Tony is obviously different, the underlying principle is the same.
How was the fun, V? Next time you ride with me, okay?
Personally, I believe Leslie Bibb's performance as reporter Christine Everhart is underrated. Despite it being a smaller role, Bibb gives an engagingly layered performance.
You've been called the Da Vinci of our time. What do you say to that?
Absolutely ridiculous. I don't paint.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad.
Interestingly, she is the only member of the press who doesn't react when Tony announces himself as Iron Man at the end of the film.
Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Unfortunately, her one-night stand with Tony does feel cheap, but then I guess that is the point. Many felt Obadiah Stane's descent into full-on villainy was too abrupt. However, his actions at the end of the film are mostly provoked by the intervention of Pepper and S.H.I.E.L.D. Furthermore, his turn isn't without setup. Stane has clearly been playing the long game. There is almost always a hidden meaning to the things he says and does. Jeff Bridges' performance is brilliantly unnerving.
I know what you're going through, Pepper. Tony. He always gets the good stuff, doesn't he?
Interestingly, this film describes Stane as a lifelong friend and ally of Howard Stark. However, the character has since all but vanished from MCU history. This film also sees the debut of Clark Gregg as Phil Coulson, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm Agent Phil Coulson with the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
That's quite a mouthful.
I know. We're working on it. Mr. Stark,
Yeah?
Agent Coulson.
Oh, yeah, the guy from the,
Strategic Homeland Intervention
right,
Enforcement and Logistics Division.
God, you need a new name for that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. You'll be hearing from us.
From the Strategic Homeland
Just call us S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
While at the time this running gag was an amusing wink to the fans, it has subsequently made less and less sense as the MCU has expanded. Multiple entries have since shown the organisation openly referring to themselves by the acronym prior to the events of this film.
What is this?
The S.H.I.E.L.D. logo.
Of course, the real-world explanation is this was the first film in the franchise. Given how much it managed to achieve, slight inconsistencies like this are easy to excuse. The fact that this is an independent film doesn't show in the production value. The visual effects are virtually flawless, seamlessly blending practical and CG techniques. The Iron Man suit in particular feels believably real. The climactic fight between Tony and Obadiah is surprisingly restrained. While this may have been due to budgetary limitations, it works in the film's favour, allowing the stakes to be more personal. Ramin Djawadi's score and song choices not only match the film's tone, but perfectly capture the character of Tony Stark. More of a rock star than a superhero. The film made several changes to aspects of the source material to better serve the story.
What about the whole cover story that it's a bodyguard? He's my body? I mean, that's kind of flimsy, don't you think?
For example, Stark's butler, Edwin Jarvis, was changed to an AI system called Jarvis, in order to avoid comparisons with Bruce Wayne's butler, Alfred Pennyworth.
The render is complete.
A little ostentatious, don't you think?
What was I thinking? You're usually so discreet.
The real Edwin Jarvis later appeared in the TV series Agent Carter.
Should you need me, call any time before 9.
What happens at 9?
My wife and I go to bed.
Despite being based on a pre-existing property, this was still an independent film, and was actually seen as a risk by many in Hollywood. Of course, with the benefit of hindsight, we all know how successful the film, and the MCU in general, became, but its strength lies in the fact it stands on its own. In contrast to Tony Stark, Marvel knew they had to walk before they could run. There are a number of nods and references to the wider Marvel universe throughout, as well as previous iterations of Iron Man. But none of these take away from viewers' ability to enjoy this film in isolation. The most blatant example of universe building was the now famous post-credits scene, featuring the first appearance of Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury.
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Funnily enough, many viewers didn't actually see the scene when the film was first released. One of the many reasons you should always stay until the end of the credits. Fury's statement,
Mr. Stark, you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
Was clearly directed to both Tony and the viewing audience, letting both know there was more to come. The film not only successfully established the Iron Man franchise, and by extension the MCU, but also the viability of Marvel Studios. The second entry in the MCU, released barely a month later, was The Incredible Hulk. The film has since come to be thought of as the black sheep of the MCU family. In fact, many casual fans are unaware it is even part of the franchise. Granted, it does feel the most disconnected. For example, it is the only entry in the series distributed by Universal Pictures. Unlike Iron Man, the Hulk had already appeared on the big screen prior to his MCU debut. Ang Lee's Hulk had been released just 5 years earlier. The character was also fairly well known from the 1978 television series, The Incredible Hulk. As such, the film wisely smashes out the Hulk's origin during the opening titles, allowing the ensuing story to explore new territory. The narrative actually takes a lot of inspiration from the TV series, with Bruce Banner living as a fugitive on the run. The film makes reference to the late Bill Bixby, who had played Dr. David Banner in the series, and features a cameo by Lou Ferrigno, who had played the Hulk.
You are the man.
Ferrigno also delivers the Hulk's few lines of dialogue.
Hulk! Smash!
There are a number of other references to both the series and the comics throughout.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Mi deixo com fome. ¿Qué? Não bang quando eu fome. Oh, wait. Oh, that's not right.
The film features Edward Norton in the role of Bruce Banner. Norton's portrayal of the character really humanizes Bruce's struggle, and his lean appearance offers a notable contrast to the Hulk.
I've got to tell you, I've been wondering if you were even real. And if you were, what would it look like? A person with that much power lurking in him. Nothing could have surprised me more than this unassuming man shaking my hand.
Liv Tyler plays Bruce's love interest, Betty Ross. Unfortunately, while her care and concern for Bruce feels genuine, there isn't a whole lot more to the character. Sadly, a lot of the more character-focused scenes were ultimately cut from the film, many of which added more dimension to several key players, including Betty's new boyfriend, Leonard, played by Modern Family's Ty Burrell. Pursuing Bruce around the world is Betty's estranged father, General Ross. William Hurt's performance was intentionally one note, as he saw the General as solely focused on a single goal. His relationship, or lack thereof, with Betty is arguably the most interesting aspect of the character.
Stop! Stop! I know you're in there! General, please!
Sir.
Dad!
Interestingly, Ross is the only character, besides Bruce, who has reappeared in subsequent MCU films, making Hurt the only actor from this film to reprise their role. The film's secondary antagonist, Emil Blonsky, is even more one-dimensional than Ross. His motivations are fairly basic.
You've seen what he becomes, right? I have. And it's beautiful. Godlike.
Need that. Make me that.
While Tim Roth is physically an interesting foil for Edward Norton, the character often comes across as dumb.
Is that all you got?
The film's ending leaves Blonsky's eventual fate somewhat ambiguous. However, it was later revealed he was being held in a specialized facility in Alaska.
If you endanger an operation, or if anyone gets hurt, I'll reassign you to Barrow, Alaska, and you'll spend the rest of your years pulling the night shift guarding Blonsky's cryocell.
Tim Blake Nelson appears briefly as Samuel Stearns. His final scene sees him begin to transform into his comic book alter ego, the Leader. Director Louis Leterrier confirmed this was included to set up the character's appearance in a potential sequel. However, various complications have since made said sequel increasingly unlikely. This dangling narrative thread was addressed in the tie-in comic, The Avengers Prelude, Fury's Big Week, wherein Stearns was apprehended by Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. While there are a couple of impressive performances throughout, the cast ultimately lack a lot of the charisma of their Marvel contemporaries. Leterrier had expressed interest in directing Iron Man. However, when that film was given to Jon Favreau, Marvel instead offered Leterrier The Incredible Hulk. The film is fairly effects heavy, Obviously, the titular character is entirely CG. While the Hulk looks significantly better than he did in the 2003 film, the effects aren't always entirely convincing. The transformation sequence is downright horrifying, though that is intentional. The finale is somewhat underwhelming. Both Hulk and Abomination look impressively intimidating, and their fight does feature some cool moments, but there is a lack of emotional engagement. The opening titles also establish the film's connection to Iron Man, with visual references to both Stark Industries and S.H.I.E.L.D. There are also several references to S.H.I.E.L.D. throughout the film.
The aliases Mr. Green and Mr. Blue have been added to the S.H.I.E.L.D. operations database.
However, what really sold the concept of a shared universe was the surprise appearance of Tony Stark in the film's final scene.
What if I told you we were putting a team together? Who's we?
Marvel have come to be revered for their sprawling, interconnected cinematic universe, and rightly so. It is an undeniably impressive achievement. However, the overall direction of the franchise hasn't always been perfectly mapped out, and this scene is a prime example. It was later recontextualized by the Marvel one-shot, The Consultant. I believe Marvel's flexibility and adaptability are both qualities which have allowed the franchise to thrive. The film even includes connections to future releases. The alternate opening famously features the frozen body of Captain America, 3 years before the character's MCU debut. The accident which turned Bruce Banner into the Hulk is revealed to have been an attempt to replicate Project Rebirth, which created Captain America back in World War II. The deleted scene also shows Bruce's attempted suicide, which the character later refers to in The Avengers.
I got low. I didn't see an end, so I put a bullet in my mouth and the other guy spit it out.
Ultimately, The Incredible Hulk wasn't as strong a film as Iron Man. However, if you have the time, or you're a completionist like me, it's definitely worth checking out, or even having in your collection. 2009 remains the only year since the commencement of the MCU in which no new film was released. However, the following year saw the release of the highly anticipated sequel, Iron Man 2. The film initially picks up directly where the first left off, though the editing doesn't quite match.
There's been speculation that I was involved in the events that occurred on the freeway on the rooftop.
Sorry, Mr. Stark. Do you honestly expect us to believe that that was a bodyguard in a suit? That conveniently appeared, despite the fact that you historically despise bodyguards?
Yes.
The story then jumps forward 6 months. Jon Favreau returned as director, bringing with him the same energy and tone.
Oh, it's good to be back. You missed me. I miss you too. Blow something up. I already did that.
The film quite believably addresses the events of the first film, as well as broader themes of legacy. The film features a couple of impressive action sequences, most notably the Monaco fight, which features Tony's brief but memorable use of the Mark V armor. Tony Stark is a lot less likable in this film. While the character was always obnoxious, here Robert Downey Jr. struggles to straddle that line.
I'm not saying that the world is enjoying its longest period of uninterrupted peace in years because of me. I'm not saying that from the ashes of captivity never has a greater phoenix metaphor been personified in human history.
Sure, Tony believes he's dying for most of the film, but his behaviour is still pretty inexcusable. There is no underlying sense of nobility to his actions as Iron Man, which stands in stark contrast to the character's arc in the first film, puns intended.
I'm not crazy, Pepper. I just finally know what I have to do. And I know in my heart that it's right.
My bond is with the people, and I will serve this great nation at the pleasure of myself. There's one thing I've proven, that you can count on me to pleasure myself.
The only person Tony lets his guard down around is Pepper.
A leave?
A company retreat.
A retreat during a time like this?
Well, I'm just saying to recharge our batteries and figure it all out.
Not everybody runs on batteries, Tony.
Nevertheless, both she and Rhodey have to put up with a lot in this film.
I don't know what to do.
You gotta be kidding me. That's it. I'm making...
No. Don't
Pepper.
call anyone.
This is ridiculous. I just stuck my neck out for this guy.
I know. I get it. I'm gonna handle it, okay? Just let me handle it.
Handle it. Or I'm gonna have to.
Don Cheadle replaces Terrence Howard as Rhodey and immediately makes the character his own. While Marvel's decision to recast the role has been a source of controversy, the way the film handles it is absolutely perfect.
Hey, buddy. Didn't expect to see you here.
Look, it's me. I'm here to deal with it. Let's move on.
Rhodey makes good on his promise from the first film.
Next time, baby.
Donning the Mark II armor, which eventually leads to him becoming War Machine. The film serves as the cinematic debut of Scarlett Johansson as the aforementioned Natasha Romanoff. The character is often paired with Favreau's Happy Hogan throughout. I do enjoy thinking about Favreau directing scenes like this.
Rule number 1, never take your eye off your opponent.
Oh my God! Happy!
That's what I'm talking about.
Just slip.
You did?
Yeah.
Looks like a TKO to me.
The film also features John Slattery as Tony's late father, Howard Stark, following Gerard Sanders' brief appearance as the character in the first film.
What is and always will be my greatest creation is you.
Slattery has since reprised the role on multiple occasions. Ivan Vanko serves as the film's main villain. Not to be confused with that other Russian villain named Ivan.
I must break you.
Despite a good performance by Mickey Rourke, the character is one of the more forgettable MCU villains. Say what you will about Malekith or Ronan the Accuser, at least people remember how forgettable they were. Admittedly, Vanko's initial plan is actually quite effective.
The reason I'm alive is because you had a shot, you took it, you missed.
Did I? If you can make God bleed, then people will cease to believe in him.
However, after he is recruited by Tony's business rival, Justin Hammer, things become far more generic. Sam Rockwell cleverly plays Hammer as a poor imitation of Tony Stark, having clearly spent years jealously living in his shadow.
Tony says we're not competitive, you know what I mean?
Following his downfall at the end of the film, Hammer made an unexpected return appearance in the Marvel one-shot All Hail the King.
Where have you been? I wrote a book in the time you were gone.
Hammer Industries also features prominently in the Netflix series Luke Cage. As I mentioned in my video, Why I Love Spider-Man Homecoming, Iron Man 2 also retroactively includes the first MCU appearance of Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man.
Nice work, kid.
Iron Man 2 pushes to expand the MCU in many ways.
Contrary to your belief, you are not the center of my universe.
Yeah,
I have bigger problems than you in the Southwest region to deal with.
Nick Fury, Phil Coulson, and S.H.I.E.L.D. all play a larger role. Unfortunately, all these competing elements make the film rather unfocused. While Iron Man had been commendably restrained with its references, subtly planting the seeds for future expansion, Iron Man 2 was far more concerned with establishing a shared cinematic universe. A prime example of this shift in focus is Captain America's S.H.I.E.L.D. Both films feature a prototype version of the iconic apparatus. However, while it only appeared briefly in the background of the first film, the second openly acknowledges it and draws attention to it.
What's this doing here?
That's it. Bring this to me.
You know what this is?
It's exactly what I need to make this work.
Jon Favreau became so frustrated with Marvel's interference, he ultimately chose not to direct the third film. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only time this sort of situation occurred. Nevertheless, it is exciting to see those connections beginning to form. For example, Coulson actually leaves this film to go take part in the then upcoming Thor.
I'm busy. What do you want?
Nothing. Goodbye. I've been reassigned. Director Fury wants me in New Mexico.
Fantastic. Land of enchantment.
So I'm told.
Secret stuff.
Something like that.
The penultimate scene includes footage from The Incredible Hulk, implying the two films take place relatively close together. In actual fact, according to Marvel Studios, the first 10 years, the events of Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor all take place in 2011. The first Iron Man film was far more successful than anyone had expected. As such, expectations for the sequel were incredibly high. There are a number of reasons why the film ultimately fell short. That being said, it certainly isn't a bad film. Unlike the first two MCU films, whose post-credit scenes had merely teased things to come, Iron Man 2 includes actual footage from Marvel's next release, Thor. I will be covering the second half of Phase 1 in the next franchise reviews video, so make sure you check that out. In the meantime, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this franchise in the comments. Let me know which of these three films is your favourite, and why. If you liked this video, why not give it a thumbs up? Maybe share it with a friend. Or an enemy. Either way, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to see more content here on Channel 73.